Well, hello guys. This is a coffee table build that is entirely out of scrap wood. So these are pieces that I just had laying on the shelf or in a cupboard or in a drawer or something like that, and wanted to make a coffee table for my mom. So I'm cutting the top and the bottom flat parts to size here. You'll notice that it's actually a leaf from a table that I got free off of Craigslist Marketplace. I always look at Craigslist Marketplace for wood, and people give them away for free as used tables. I don't care because I'm just gonna cut them to size and then plane them and make beautiful pieces of wood out of the wood that I get for free. So this is all solid oak. The downside, of course, with a table free from Facebook Marketplace is that, well, when you disassemble it, you've got the staples and such that are still in there, and you don't want to put staples or any kind of metal through your planer. So, and there's a couple of high spots, just little glue spots or stain spots or just wear and tear. So, knock those down before I send it through the planer. So I believe these are the runners for the little coffee table. Cut them to size in the frame before this. And then I'm just simply cleaning up the edges with my planer to make it so that all pieces are uniform and they're square at this point. They've got a hard edge. But what I do know is that they are all the same size and planed on all four sides. So then my makeshift table router, I've got a round over bit there, and I'm just taking that edge off with the router and doing it on all four sides. And at this point, those pieces are too long. Now these are legs from a table that again got off of free Facebook Marketplace, but they're solid oak, and I just couldn't not keep them. So I've literally had these for probably 2 years on my shelf waiting for a project to do with them. And I found one, and it's this coffee table project, so I pulled them off the shelf and sanded them down. The stain, of course, on there was the wrong color stain for what I'm going for. So lots of sanding down. So these are the pieces that are too long at this point, but I'm sanding them down before I cut them on the chop saw. So that's probably going to be next. I like the shot because of the clouds moving behind me in the background. Like I said, they're too long on purpose, so I'm truing up one end on the chop saw, just taking a sliver off. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my chop saw is square. I try to do this at least every day, certainly beginning of every project, but pretty much anything can bump that and get it out of square, so it's always good to check it. So now I've got my dimensions, cutting them down to length, so I should have 4 shorter ones and 3 longer ones at this point. And you'll see how that comes together now. So again, these are all sanded and ready for assembly. What I'm doing here, dry fit, but it's not really fitting anywhere. I'm just seeing how it's going to work out. I've decided to do pocket holes on the bottom. You're never going to see these pocket holes because, again, they're up against the floor, facing down. Never see them. So now I'm laying out the pieces. I'm doing the long sides first. Again, this is the support for the top of the table. You'll see how that works here in a bit. I did pocket screws, and basically the glue is what's going to hold that thing together, but the pocket screws just adds just a little bit more strength. I'm not too worried about it. It's not a real big piece, but the pocket screws are pointing down, so you'll never see them. And then I'm going ahead and gluing the edges and doing a bar clamp on the glue seam. And basically what I do is I'll go ahead and glue it, and I'll let it set for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Just let that glue essentially work also as a clamp. and then I will drive the screws in, and the piece ends up exactly where I want it to be. Of course, you have to persuade it just a little bit. Check for square, tighten up the clamp, and let it set again 5-10 minutes, something like that. And then squeeze out, of course. I want to get that cleaned up now, just kind of save some time later on in assembly. Driving the screws in now that the glue is set up enough that the glue essentially is working as a clamp as well. Again, this is only 5 or 10 minutes, and I think the work time on this is an hour. So I can do the same thing for the other side of the coffee table. Again, gluing the runner down, clamping it down so it's in the right spot, and then driving a pocket screw in, calling it good. So these are the shorter pieces. So this would be the shorter pieces that go on the top, which right now the table's upside down. So that's what you're seeing here is the shorter piece that will be connected to the actual top of the table. Let me get that the right size. Now this placement's tricky because this piece is closer to the ground. So as you're looking at the piece right now, it's going to be higher. But again, the table's upside down. But these horizontal pieces, I want them in the right spot so that this horizontal piece, long piece, is exactly where I need it to be. And so what I did is now that piece is just sitting in there and it's not being glued, it's just the short pieces that are being glued. I can place them exactly where I want them and clamp it down, and I know that the spacing is correct. So essentially I'm using that long runner piece as a spacer so that my short pieces are exactly where I want them to be. And I just pinch down the clamps just a little bit, and then I'm able to readjust as needed. I'm also able to make sure that the table is square, and that's what I'm doing here. So I take the legs. I know that they're 90 off of the long runner pieces, and I think I was a little bit out of square here. I think not much. I think like maybe 3/8 or something like that. So this is me checking that, and I realize that I'm just off just a little bit. Probably no one would ever notice, but what the heck, let's go ahead and make it square. So I get my bar clamp out. This barely connected to the two legs to pinch it. The angle's just barely wrong, but it worked out. That was able to pinch the table together and make that perfectly square. 49.7/8. So with this glue set up just a little bit, or maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so, I can drive a couple of pocket screws in. Again, I don't think it does too much for strength, but more or less peace of mind. So now we're working on the flat surfaces. I think this is the bottom piece. Again, my chop saw is square. I put a square line on this piece. You can't see it, but then I'm making sure that the blade that I'm cutting is right on that square line that I put on there. And so we're truing up one side of it, and I think off camera I true up the other side of it after I get a good measurement. Oh, that's right. It was too wide. Again, all my pieces are too wide until final dimension cutting. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm sucking in a whole lot of dust. Definitely wear your dust mask, kids. And once it's the final width, then I was able to cut it to the final length. Everything gets a round over, so I'm back to my makeshift table router that literally built myself, and it serves me just fine. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm rounding over all four edges. Again, this is the bottom shelf, and you'll see how that goes here in just a second. Of course, all sanding. You should thank me that I'm speeding that up for you, because sanding's boring. Okay, so now the table is right side up. So I flipped it over, and again, I wanted these short pieces to be in the same plane as the top short pieces. That's why I had that spacer there. And so I raised it up. I think I raised it up 3/4 of an inch and put some glue on it and got it right to the right spot. And then I pinched it together with that longer piece, and that longer piece is not glued in at this point. I'm just using it as a spacer and a holder for those short pieces. And this is another section of a table that I got for free on Facebook Marketplace. I think it's perfect length, but it's too wide. So what I did is I cut it so that I can have two equal pieces, and the pieces are wide enough to exactly fit in my planer. And just like all free stuff, you got to make sure that there's no metal in there. And so I already know there's some staples on one end, so I went ahead and took care of that before I ran it through the planer. And again, you're sanding the high spots because, free wood on Facebook Marketplace, you got all sorts of stuff on old tables, and you just want to make it a little bit more smoother before you run it into the planer, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. And these boards cleaned up really, really well. You'll see here in a second when I do a final glue up. It's just beautiful wood. But again, I got free on Facebook Marketplace. So now these pieces are the right length, and they're exactly half width. And so the seam connecting the two is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and spread some Type 3. This is the tabletop, and Type Bond 3 is food safe. I don't see a whole lot of food going on here except maybe chips or whatever. But still, what the heck? I've got it, and I'm going to go ahead and use it. It's also got a longer setup time, so I can play around with this seam and make sure that it's just super, super perfect. So glue, gonna pinch it, gonna have a little bit of squeeze out, and gonna clean that up here in just a second. So at this point, I'm paying attention to the seam, making sure that it's just really perfect. And a little bit of persuasion here and there, and to get that real close. And I ended up getting it really, really tight, and not a whole lot of sanding as far as that seam was concerned. Once I do have it pinched, I can go ahead and grab a wet cloth and take care of that glue squeeze out. And again, not a huge important step, except that it just helps you a little bit later with cleanup and your final sanding. So now that these short pieces on the bottom of the legs are dry, I'm going to go ahead and drive pocket screws in there. Now that middle piece again is still not glued in, so I'm going to I decided to go horizontal on this, so the board's not going to be like more vertical than horizontal. It's going to be flat. And no particular reason. This is not structural whatsoever. It essentially just keeps the legs on the left and the right straight up and down, just an added support, but certainly not structural. So I'm just going to, again, do one pocket hole. I might actually have put these pockets up, because one of those flat pieces is going to cover the pocket hole, and you're never going to see it. Yeah, even you can see there on the right, the pocket hole's facing up, and you're like, why would you do that? Well, it's going to get covered, and so I'm not too worried about it. I've went ahead and marked exactly where this board needs to go, exactly where center is, slide it in there, and then I pinched together with a bar clamp that's too short. And there you go. Now it's good. And I'm just able to pinch it and then position it exactly. I don't want it level with the short pieces. I want it a little bit down, because again, it's not structural, and that little horizontal piece isn't going to actually sit on it. And so now we're up to final sanding before we're going to do some finishing. And sanding is just so boring, so I sped this up for you, but I was able to get all the surfaces and all the corners nice and sanded. So this is the eventual top that is going to go ahead and get a round over. The round over on the ends is actually the round over from the table that I got free from Marketplace. That round over was actually a little bit more significant than what my router's doing. So it's just a little bit of a difference. Like I would call it a detail on this table, and it looked good, so I went ahead and kept it. Kind of sanding. I'm pretty sure I went up to 220. I went from 80 to 220 on this, and then I'm going to go ahead and it's essentially dry fit, even though I'm not attaching the bottoms, but you can kind of see how the table is going to end up when all said and done. And there it is. This is essentially finished without finish. I'm really happy how this came out. And again, all of this wood, oak, beautiful oak, is oak that I just had in my shop. I have not gone out and purchased anything yet on this project. I don't think I purchased anything on this project. Maybe the clamps, the metal pieces that hold the tops and the bottom onto the structure. It's the only thing really I paid for, a couple bucks for that. So I went ahead and did pre-finish just to make sure that the finish that I'm putting on here just goes on real smoothly. This is a real thick oil-ish Minwax color. I can't remember what the actual color is. I want to say Old American. That might not be perfectly accurate. I can't remember. But once the finish was on there and wiped on, and I gave it overnight to cure, and I had a fan going on it. Now I'm doing polyurethane. I went with the satin, and I ended up doing 2 coats of this. One coat, let it sit overnight. Went ahead and sanded it down to I want to say 300, and then applied a second coat of polyurethane. It's not the easiest to do the structure part of it. It's a lot easier doing the softer. Here's me sanding it down to 300 and then adding another coat of poly. All in all, I'm really happy with the look of the wood. Everything just turned out real smooth. There's no splotches. There's no anything like that. Just a real smooth, even finish. And I think that pre-stain helped a lot. So here's the second coat of the polyurethane, and I'm just using a paper towel, real thick paper towel to do this. It just seems to work just fine for me. So now I'm attaching the bottom shelf, and I'm using an L bracket. I'm only using 2, one on each side, and I'm alternating on the other side of the longer piece. So it's when I screw it down, it's balanced. It's resting on the shorter pieces. It's not even touching the middle structure piece. It's me attaching it, and now I'm doing flat pieces through the top of the leg, and those pieces have a little bit of give to it, so it allows the wood to expand and contract over seasons. I measured it, made sure we're absolutely center, and flipped it back over. Got a good shot of it. You'll see here in just a second it being delivered over to my parents' house for them to enjoy. Really happy with this. It's just a beautiful piece. You can see there the coasters that I made. Same stain, same wood, same everything. You can also see the end table there in the picture that I made for them a couple of years ago, actually. And there's the coffee table. Thanks for watching.